And welcome back to the Power Accountability League. I am your pal, Dan L. This is my channel. And avoiding propaganda from the government and the mainstream media is the best way for you to stay well. Today's video is entitled Candace Owens and Me. I don't know Candace Owens personally, never met her. Possibility I never will meet her, that's fine. But I have observed her from afar. I've complimented her in previous videos, and I'm going to compliment her again. She migrated from the far left over to the political right, and that takes courage and wisdom, so I applaud that. And I saw an interview with her recently where she talked about herself as a child. And someone asked her, well, how did you migrate from the left to the right? And she said, well, I noticed something about myself when I was young. I like to ask the question why. And she mentioned she'd been contacted recently by one of her teachers who said, I knew you were going to go far someday. Now, did that teacher really know that, or was that teacher jumping on a bandwagon? I don't know. But it certainly indicates, or at least, and I find it easy to believe, she was the type of person who, as a youngster, asked the question why. I remember watching an interview with Carl Sagan. He lamented the fact that adults, not just in American society, in every society on earth, discourage children from asking why. I know from my personal experience growing up, I liked asking the question why, and the adults around me usually were like, you know what? Don't ask that question. Or more importantly, you don't need to know. They'd say something like that. You don't need to know. So I personally witnessed adults telling children, specifically me and some other friends of mine, you know what? You don't need to know the answer to those questions or to that question. And as a kid, I thought that's a horrible way to respond to someone with a question that starts with why. And the reason I'm so fixated on the WHY, on the why factor of growing when you're growing up, is because critical thinking skills usually start with the question why. So the question why is very important, especially if you're going to refine your critical thinking skills. Anyway, so like I said, Candace Owens deserves a lot of applause, but she also is someone I admire because she asked the question why. That's something I hope you do. Most people, by the time they're adults, get tired of asking why because they learn as children that they're not going to get any positive feedback. They're going to be not only to be discouraged, but if you ask the question why too much, you're going to be punished. So children grow up and become adults who don't like to ask the question why. Anyway, we're going to get right to an article I want to read to you, which is going to be tied into this subject of asking the question why. So it's and by the way, recently I've discovered, and I'll talk about this in future videos, several new websites which provide lots of good information for you, for the voting public, for the average taxpayer, for the average citizen. Some good websites that you should check out. And again, and I'm not associated with these websites. I just have discovered that they have some information that I think is relevant to helping pull us out of this dystopia that we're all trapped inside of. Anyway, the name of this website is www.whitehouse.news. And I'm going to read you an article from this website. And here we go. The name of the article is Two Georgia Poll Workers Fired for Becoming Whistleblowers. And I realize this is old news, but just bear with me. We're going to get to some important stuff. Two poll workers in Georgia who became whistleblowers after raising concerns regarding election irregularities were informed this week that their contracts were not going to be renewed despite the decades they have put into working for the state. Bridget Thorne and Susan Voiles spoke up about witnessing abnormal actions taken by other officials during the election in Fulton County, which includes most of Atlanta. In a related story, there was a Georgia recount in DeKalb County. Biden accidentally was given an extra 9,626 votes in DeKalb County. Voiles, who has been working in elections for 20 years, said in her signed affidavit and subsequent testimony in front of the state legislature that she found a batch filled with pristine ballots that were all marked exactly the same way. 98% of those ballots voted for Democrat nominee Joe Biden. She said that she had never in all her experience ever seen a whole host of ballots that were made in such a uniform, almost mechanical fashion. Thorne, who worked as a voting technician, claimed that ballots were not being handled properly at the State Farm Arena, which served as a vote tabulation center. When they came in from the warehouse, they were haphazardly treated by anybody who wanted to dump the ballots out of the scanner tabulator, she said. There weren't two people present. People were just dumping them in suitcases and then leaving the suitcases on the floor. Dwight Bauer, an election consultant for the Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections, informed Thorne and Voiles, that's Voyles, Thorne is spelled Thorne, that, according to Georgia law, they have to be reappointed as poll managers for each election event. The department has the power to choose to appoint new poll managers. This is in quotation marks, there are many factors, management skills, performance, actions, behavior, etc., considered prior to making reappointments for each primary or election, wrote Bauer. Unfortunately, a decision has been made to not reappoint you in a poll management or other poll position in Fulton County. During an interview with NTD TV, Voiles lamented the decision, saying that there is no doubt that it's because she became a whistleblower. In quotation, I see it as a direct consequence of my being honest. In that oath, we say that I will, to the best of my abilities, make sure there is no fraud or deceit. It kind of goes on down like this. So I saw what I was doing was an extension of my job as a poll manager. In other words, I had seen fraud. I had seen deceit. I had seen the things that in our poll reading we were warned to stay away from and to report if we see them. I did, and in this case, at this point, the truth was not received well. Georgia Secretary of State condemns firing, demands whistleblowers be reinstated. Brad Raffensperger, Georgia's Secretary of State, has criticized the firing of Voiles and Thorne. Quotation, I condemn in the strongest terms the decision by Fulton County election officials to fire two poll managers purely for raising concerns about the November elections, said Raffensperger on Friday, December 18th. Now, I'm going to stop here just for a moment, and I'm going to state that Brad Raffensperger is a big part of the problem, and you're going to find in the next few moments, you're going to find out why. But I just want you to know, Brad Raffensperger is a bad guy, and Governor Kemp of Georgia, they're both Republicans, and they're two of the worst, and this channel is very critical of Republicans, and these guys are why this channel is critical, because you're about to find out what they are all about. So here I go. I'm going to continue reading the article. This is Brad Raffensperger speaking. Though we have found no credible evidence of widespread fraud, it is important that individuals can raise their voice when they believe they have seen wrongdoing, he added. So I'm going to stop for a second. So what he's there doing is he's basically saying these two ladies are wrong. He's calling them liars. Anyway, and then Brad Raffensperger continues. Retribution against whistleblowers poses a threat to the continued strength and vibrancy of our democracy. Georgia officials like Raffensperger have insisted that the election was run smoothly despite the fact that multiple lawsuits have been filed alleging ballot tampering and voter and election fraud. In response to Raffensperger's statement and other previous criticisms of the way Fulton County handled their election, the county's Board of Commissioner Chairman Rob Pitts told reporters that he isn't certain why. We are the largest county in the state of Georgia, the largest of 159, said Pitts. I cannot speak to what the other 158 counties in Georgia are doing, but I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that within Fulton County, there was no hanky-panky whatsoever with respect to the recent election. Zero. Okay, so that is the end of that article. So let's come back now. So we're going to get back to this particular episode. And remember, I started out by saying asking the question why is important. Well, let's ask the question why. Why were two ladies who were poll managers, both of them with about 20 years of experience in election work, poll elections, why were they told not to come back? We don't want you back. And there's another article from the website www.ntd. I think it's .com. Let me look it up here. Hold on one sec. I just want to confirm this thing. Yeah, ntd.com. I don't know that much about the website, but anyway, in that article I read that what Fulton County wants to do is replace its veteran election officials with newbies, people who are brand new, people who don't have a lot of experience working on elections. Now let's ask the question, why? Why would they not want veterans to come back, especially poll managers to come back? Well, you're thinking, well, if you're a whistleblower, you've challenged the authority figures higher up the chain of command, and that's true. The two ladies were basically calling out their bosses, and what do we know about people high up the power scale, people who have a lot of power. They don't like being questioned. That's why adults tell children, you don't need to ask me that question. You don't need to bother yourself with those questions. That's why adults talk down to children. And sometimes children are asking dumb questions, but even when a dumb question is asked by a child, an adults should try and explain to them why the question have may be a flawed premise or whatever. But the point is, even if it's a dumb question, you should still answer the question. Anyway, so in this case, well, when you ask why these two ladies are not brought back, it's not just because the people higher up don't want to be questioned. We know definitely that's part of it. But it's another part. They need young minds to brainwash. They need newbies, people who've never seen previous elections, people who don't know how the system works. See, these ladies have been doing it for 20 years. I think each of them 20 years approximately. So these ladies have seen previous elections. So when these ladies see changes made in the elections, they can compare it to something, can't they? These ladies and so they can compare it to previous election cycles, and they're like, "Oh wow, we're making some interesting changes in this election cycle." And these changes really don't conform to the ideas of integrity, transparency, etc., etc. So they were two whistleblowers, and I don't. I think I think that a lot of validity to what they were saying. But most importantly, whether or not I believe that, whether or not you believe that, as Raffensperger said, they should be protected. They should have the right to challenge what their superiors are doing. These elections are a big deal. Now, Raffensperger also, why did he said, well, there's no widespread fraud. Remember, he used the word widespread. He's basically admitting there was fraud. It just wasn't widespread. Bill Barr, after the November 2020 election, Bill Barr said, well, there was zero improprieties in the November 2020. But then a few weeks later, he said, there wasn't a lot of it. There wasn't enough of it. He actually said, Bill Barr, William Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, said there wasn't enough fraud to change the outcome of the election. So Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, the person in control of the elections, he's admitting there was fraud. And this channel is very critical of Republicans because Republicans are okay with a certain amount of criminality. We know that the Democrats, the political left, they're not just okay with criminality. That's what they prefer. If you ask a Democrat, which would you prefer, the rule of law or the rule of criminals? Since they're all criminals, they prefer the rule of criminals. The whims of men and women. I don't want the whims of men and women. I want the rule of law. It's better. Trust me, it's better. Well, you don't have to trust me. Challenge me, doubt me, and go out and decide for yourself. Which is better? A society, a civilization that has a rule of law, or a civilization that is controlled by the whims of men and women? So there's a couple of big whys. Why were those ladies told not to come back? Well, for corrupt reasons. Corrupt, criminal, illegal, crappy reasons they were told not to come back. And why was Raffensperger, though it appeared on the surface that he was defending them, when you do a deep dive into his comments, he wasn't really defending them. Raffensperger doesn't like these ladies either. He should, and again, Raffensperger's a Republican, so is Kemp, the governor. And these ladies were fighting for integrity, which probably, when you have integrity in elections, guess who probably benefits? Republicans. But as usual, Republicans are a circular firing squad. They're a self-destructive force in nature, sadly. And that's why this channel is so critical of Republicans and many conservatives who are also, like many Republicans, circular firing squad. So anyway, so there's a couple examples where you ask the question why, and it leads you to some very important information, which is, if it's not corrupt, why are you afraid of? If there's nothing but integrity in Georgia, why are you afraid of these two ladies? And why? And if it's pure integrity in the election, why does Raffensperger said there was no widespread fraud? Why not just say there was no fraud? Because there was fraud, and Raffensperger and Kemp know it. They signed off on it. Stacey Abrams filed a bunch of lawsuits when she lost the election for governor, and all the Republicans gave Stacey Abrams what she wanted. And what she wanted was to basically make cheating okay. And that's what Georgia now has. It's okay to have low integrity elections because it makes Stacey Abrams happy. Anyway, that was today's video. Thanks for stopping by. On my next video, I'm going to have kind of a pretty big announcement, so please stop by for that video. Anyway, have a great 2022. We're early January. Anyway, take care. Bye-bye.